Aloha, welcome to Fast, Healthy, and Ono Cooking. My name is Lonnie, and I'm an AARP Hawaii volunteer. I'll be your host tonight. Tonight, we'll be finishing our virtual travels through the Mediterranean with a healthier version of air fryer falafel, a popular dish that can be found in many countries along the Mediterranean and around the world. On behalf of our sponsors, Kaunoa Senior Services on Maui, Uala Leaf Cafe at Windward Community College, and AARP Hawaii, welcome. For those of you who are new or unfamiliar with AARP Hawaii, we are a membership organization for people 50 and older, but what we do for everyone. We hope that with this series, you can learn some techniques that you can build or maintain a healthy lifestyle. Let's do a quick bit of housekeeping. This is a picture of what you should be seeing at the bottom of your screen, your Zoom screen on a PC and possibly the top of the screen on your iPad. Everyone is currently on mute. And if you want to submit a question or a comment, please click on the button that says Q&A and type in your question. I will be monitoring the questions and making sure they get asked. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you may type your questions in the comments. We are not using the raise hand button. The chat feature can be used if you want to make a comment to everyone or to communicate a technical question to our volunteers. We recommend that you select side-by-side view rather than gallery view for this presentation. To do this by clicking on the upper right part of your screen. Once you are in that view, you can change the size of the slides or of the speaker simply by clicking and dragging on the middle bar. Finally, we have added closed captioning to this presentation for those who have difficult hearing. You can turn this off on your end by clicking on the CC Live transcript button in the lower right side of your screen and clicking on Hide Subtitle. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Chef Daniel Swift, who will be leading us through this cooking series. Over to you, Chef.
Thanks, Lonnie.
You're welcome.
That was smooth. That was perfect.
Thank you.
The tough act to follow. What are you doing? No. Just kidding. Okay, well, welcome everybody to, what is, like Lonnie said, our last class that's sort of focusing on Mediterranean style stuff. Although this is popular in Egypt, not just the Mediterranean, other parts of the world, you can buy this in Honolulu as well. And we'll go through the ingredients for falafel. We'll make the falafel tonight. We're trying to reduce the fat, so we're not frying it, obviously. They can be baked, certainly. We're using an air fryer. Tonight, a toaster oven would work. You could even do them in a saute or a nonstick pan would work better. Just a little bit of spray to get a tiny bit of fat on the outside to help in the caramelization. But that's the primary focus, is to get away from that deep fried aspect of it. Although they are delicious when they're deep fried, they can be just as good if we use an air fryer or toaster oven at a high heat and a little bit of oil on the outside. So we'll do the falafel. We also have a tahini. I've got this set up over here for that. It's a tahini sauce. So we've used tahini in a couple things with the ground sesame paste. It's common here in Hawaii. It's used in a lot of different items. So this is just a yogurt-based and tahini sauce. So we'll go through that, mix that up. And then I made, or just grabbed some ingredients to put a salad together to go with it. We're trying to stay away from the pita pockets. Traditionally, this would be served with pita pockets or grilled vegetables, other items like that. So we're just going to do it with a nice fresh salad. I'll cut up some tomatoes, zucchini, some romaine. We have a nice head of romaine to go with that, and an onion, almost sort of like a little bit of a Greek salad in essence. And then we'll serve that with the falafel. So, of course, as always, just ask questions if you have them as we go along. And then next week we move into a different realm. I think we have meat jun and some other dishes starting a new series. So we appreciate everyone joining us. We know that things are opening up and people are getting out and about. Spring is in the air, and on a Thursday night, we appreciate you taking a few minutes to jump in and join us. So there are a couple pieces of equipment that you need for this. Honestly, you could probably do this all by hand if you want to take the time to do the chopping or the mashing of the chickpeas, but it's easiest to use a food processor. And then, as I mentioned earlier, of course, an air fryer in this case to do the cooking. A burner with a pan, as I mentioned, would work also. So let's look at the ingredients that we have for the falafel, and they're all usually pretty much the same. There's a few variations, I suppose, out there. But as always, I would encourage you to get creative. If you don't want to use cumin or some other spice that's in a traditional recipe, you can substitute it with something that you like. So we've got the chickpeas, and these particular ones were dried. And you might find some recipes or folks that make this that tell you to go with the dried one as opposed to the canned one. I soaked these overnight, and then I just brought them to a boil very shortly. It didn't take long at all, about 10 minutes. They were in one of the cast iron enamel skillets, the orange one, as a matter of fact, and it had the lid on it, so it cooked really quickly. And they, to me, always tend to be, even if they're cooked from dry or if they're canned, a little dry. It's not like a lot of beans where you bite into it and it has a degree of moisture and pastiness to it on the inside. These always taste to me like they're undercooked a little bit. So that's sort of a characteristic that you look for in falafel, because you're getting that texture and a little bit of dryness. So that's why we saved some of the juice, in this case, the water that was used to boil it in. If you're doing canned, which is what the recipe wrote, or what I wrote up in the recipe, just save that juice that you're draining off, because you might need it. If not, then you can use it in something else or discard it. So up to you. So we've got those squared away, and I went with a little extra. I think the recipe calls for about 2 cups. This is closer to 4, just so I can make it a little bit bigger batch, easier for you to see. Small onion diced. We've got some garlic that's diced. I got to give a shout out to Chef Steve. I had class all day today, so he prepped and set this up for me, which makes me think I don't have much to do tonight. Everything's chopped and done. So we might be done in 15 minutes, Lonnie. If we are, you gotta take up the other 30 minutes telling stories. So the parsley's chopped, the garlic is chopped, and then we've got the coriander, ground cumin, a little bit of salt, and I have some chili flakes. I have chili flakes on the recipe, but what I did with these was put them in this coffee grinder. We used that over the course of the last few classes, just the one we used to grind spices, because I didn't want the large flakes and seeds in it. I wanted to grind it up. So I'm looking at this thinking it might be a little bit hot, because I delivered it to Jackie after the show. That might be a little too much for her, so I'll hold back on that a little bit. And then what you might think of as kind of an odd ingredient for this is baking powder. So what that does basically is just gives it a little bit of lightness as it cooks. So for those of you who bake or work with baking powder or baking soda, baking powder is a mixture of sodium bicarbonate, baking soda, and an acid, which is usually in the form of cream of tartar. So when those 2 ingredients are mixed together, this is a double acting baking powder. That means that it starts to release gases when it comes into contact with moisture and when it comes into contact with heat. So adding that into the mixture is going to, this is a little bit dry, so it's not like it's going to start rising immediately like a cake batter or something might. But once it goes into the fryer and it's exposed to heat, it will release some gases and help lighten the falafel itself. So all of these, I would say, can be a little bit varied in terms of the quantities that you have. The recipe we sent out has measurements, but like I said, if you're not a fan of cumin, you want to try some other item like chili powder or something like that to give it a different flavor, feel free to do that. Totally up to you. So lots of interesting approaches that you can do. Sorry, security's walking by, waving at them, to the recipe itself. So I've got the food processor. Always make sure, if you can see here, put the blade in before you put the ingredients. Once you fill the bin with ingredients, you can't get the blade down in there. So on the recipe, I put add all of the ingredients to the food processor to pulse it up. So I've got the chickpeas in there, or garbanzo beans. I'm going to throw in the onion with pretty much diced up already. The parsley chopped up, and that could, I'm looking at that, I'm like, oh, I could go a lot more. Sometimes you see these where they're really green, other times they're more of a golden color. So the amount of parsley that you add is what's going to make an impact on there. A little bit of the garlic. I'm going to add all this cumin. I love that. Coriander, which is, you probably know, is the spice or the seed of ground cilantro or Chinese parsley. So that's a natural marrying there. I'll go with half of these chili flakes to start, and then we'll see where we're at the end. A little bit of salt. Always check it, or I do here, because we teach a lot of classes, and you might think it's salt, but you find out it's sugar. It gets mixed up a lot. So we'll add that in there. And I'm going to hold off on the baking powder just for the time being. We'll fold it in here at the end. And then I'm putting on the lid. Hopefully we've got power. Now pulsing on and off. And with the garlic and with the onion already cut up, really all we're doing is breaking down the chickpeas, the texture and consistency that we're looking for, which you don't want to mush paste. You still want a little bit of texture to it. So we don't want to go crazy and go too far. Food processor only going to take you, 10 to 20, 30 seconds at the most, probably. And I can stop it, check it, take a look. Usually if I just feel it with my fingers to see what the texture is, how big the pieces are, they're pretty close. I'm going to go a little bit more. I think that's pretty close to what we're looking for. Yeah, maybe another couple of 5 seconds. And if you got questions, Lonnie, feel free to ask.
Okay, I do have 2 questions from Lana and Marianne.
Sure.
Lana wants to know how many ounces of dried chickpeas to replace the canned chickpeas.
They should double in weight. I'm throwing in a little cilantro, by the way, just because I like it. And I had some here. But the cans are usually about 14 ounces. And this particular bag was a pound, I believe a pound. And I ended up with 2 pounds. So what you saw there plus this is what that yielded. So it usually about doubles in weight once a bean is cooked and hydrated. So I ended up with, about 3 cups dry turned into 6 cups cooked. So I don't think you can find a smaller bag. So if you don't want to utilize the extra in something else, you're better off probably buying the canned. But they work great in soups. You can use it in a lot of different other things as well. So you can just mix that.
Marianne's question is, are chickpeas the same as garbanzo beans?
Oh, great question. No, they are not, but they're in the same family. And a lot of times this is made with those beans, fava beans, or it's also a combination of the two. They're a little bit bigger, like a lima bean. I don't know. We don't really see those in Hawaii much, lima beans, but I grew up eating them. I never liked them as a kid, but I like them now as an adult. So you can substitute those out. Honestly, you can make this with a different kind of bean as well. You want to use kidney beans or something, feel free, get creative. Black beans, just try it out. And that's just mixing the bottom up a little bit. So that should be about where we want it to be. Notice I poured in just a little bit of moisture. I want to make a mess on my board here. And if I've got some pieces of cilantro that are not like minced and pureed, then that's fine. I don't mind a little bit of the leaf chunk in there. So I'm going to turn this out into the bowl. Knock off the excess. You can see it's nice and crumbly. And as we always talk about, like cross-utilization and things that you can do with the items that we make, even a classic like this that's been around for hundreds of years, maybe even longer, honestly. I don't know when the first one was made. Might have been 1,000 years ago or more. you can, I'm just thinking, oh, I could do patties with this. I could do a layer in a casserole with this. If I had a rectangular glass pan, I could put a thin layer, pack it down, canned diced tomatoes, cheese, just layer it up. There's just so much you can do. So we're gonna focus on the traditional use of it, but there's a lot of other things you can do as well. So you can see I've got, or maybe you can, a little bit of the green still in there in the form of the cilantro. And it's a little bit on the drier side, but I'm going to add my baking powder and I'm going to hit it with just a little bit more moisture. And I'll stir it all together to get the consistency that I'm looking for. So since I increased this recipe quantity with the chickpeas, I could probably get away with adding a little bit more leavening agent in the form of that baking powder. But I don't mind if they're a little dense. I'm going to be eating most of these myself. Sorry, Alice. And then you can see as I added that extra moisture, it created like a paste, something that can hold its shape together, which is what we're looking for here. This would be good. We made cornbread today. This would be good mixed into cornbread batter and baked into muffins, or have a little ball that you drop inside of a muffin of cornbread and it would bake around it. That would make a nice little surprise inside. I'm going to just put a touch more of the juice and mix it up. So this is basically like a fritter. If you've ever had a hush puppy or any other batter that's kind of like ground up grain or corn and then scooped and fried, basically exactly what this is. I'm going to start the air fryer just to make sure we can get some heat going. Hopefully it won't be too loud.
I do have a question for Marguerite, and she wants to know, is chickpea same as yellow split peas?
No, chickpea is a garbanzo bean, which is a rounder, larger one like this. And split pea is closer to like a lentil, and they're much, much smaller, and it's a seed that splits in half naturally, so you end up with the two halves. So yeah, we don't use that a whole lot here, but one of my favorites for sure. Split pea, the red, there's green is probably the most popular one, but they're not exactly the same thing. Much, much smaller, and they split and separate, unlike the garbanzo bean that stays whole. Spanish term, English term, same thing, yes. Chickpea and garbanzo bean, same thing. Yeah. Oh, I thought you said garbanzo bean. Or fava bean. Oh, the earlier question was a garbanzo bean and chickpea? Oh, then I was wrong. I thought you said fava bean, sorry. Fava is the larger one that I was talking about. So yeah, chickpea and garbanzo bean, yes, same thing. So sorry, Alice just wrote a note to let me know. It's been a long day. I was up at 6 teaching all day. So here we have the batter, but I do love fava beans. I don't know if you guys like them or not, but you should check them out. And you can see this gets scooped. It'll hold its shape, and you can do little patties if you want, which is what I'm going to try to do today. Just flatten them out a little bit because we're not frying them. I want them to cook through a little bit more quickly. So I'm just using just a basic ice cream scoop. You could easily spoon this out as well. It wouldn't matter. And the size is up to you. Thank you for that gentle correction, Alice. Yes, I do make mistakes. I think I can get, see how many I can get on this. And hopefully they'll fit inside the base here. Keep the paper in there. Oh, look, I almost started the fire. Okay. And I'll put a couple more on here. And this can be done Especially, I mean, this is a double batch, as I mentioned before, compared to the recipe, but it can be done in advance and then scooped and frozen. So you could freeze this either in a container whole, or you could scoop them and freeze them individually and then put them in a Ziploc bag once they're solid and frozen, and then take them out as you need them. So it would hold up really, really well in the freezer. So what I want to do here is just like lightly spray them. We've talked about that before in numerous classes, and this is just a light salad oil spray. More often than not, I tend to use the olive oil spray or some of the other sprays that are available to provide a little bit more flavor. This one could also then be seasoned, so I'm going to hit it with just a little bit, my favorite little pepper, this Aleppo pepper that we've been using, just to give it just a hint of heat on top. Nice color. And then I'll drop it in the, hope not literally drop it, but set it in here. And then we'll see. I'm going to set this. I tend to go on the higher side for this, so 375 to 400. And I'm just going to set it for about 5 minutes for the moment. It's already preheated. These don't take long to preheat, but we'll check on it. I can always add more time. So I always encourage folks that are baking anything or using toaster ovens or whatnot, always err on the side of less time as opposed to more, because you can simply add a little bit more easy enough. But once you've gone too far and burnt something, there's not really any going back from that. All right. So now the next thing I wanted to do is just show you just a little bit of sauce with a dip that would go. And this would be our dressing for our salad as well. I'm not going to necessarily toss it with it, but I could if I wanted to. And this is really easy. It's a tahini sauce. I said the recipe, or I hope so, should be on the top of the recipe for this week that went out. My apologies, even last week. What was it? I forgot something. Oh, the artichoke hearts. So I did make sure to read the description that was written this week, and that's where it mentions pita, but it says we're doing a healthy version. So I don't know if Jackie's watching or not. Jackie Bowen, she's going to be scolding me later, I'm sure. So tahini, super simple. This one is a sauce, and you see a lot of variations on salad dressings, sauces. You can even do marinades and things like that with our sesame paste, which is what tahini is. So we've got some Greek yogurt, and that's just the plain straight up Greek yogurt. If you wanted to make a dressing and use like a peach yogurt or some flavored yogurt, I don't really think that would be a bad thing. I can imagine peach or mango going really well with sesame seeds. So it's totally up to you. I got the tahini there. Lemon's already been zested. Steve, thank you for zesting that. And I'm looking at the zest. I don't know if you guys can tell. I just lost my camera. Can you still see me? Okay. I don't need the camera. But hopefully you can see this is a lot of zest from one lemon. And I'm looking at, I don't want it to overpower this dip. So I'm not going to use all of it initially. I'm going to save half of it on the side. I can always add it back later if I want to. But again, if you go too much in the beginning, then you can't really take it out. So I've got that. I'll juice the lemon. And always use a strainer if you have one, or you can use your fingers to let the juice drain through, but you want to catch any seeds that you might have. And I can already see like 4 or 5 or 6 seeds right there. And I'm only going to go with half, because just like the zest, sometimes you get a lemon that gives you a teaspoon of lemon juice. Sometimes you get a lemon that gives you like 2.5 or 3 tablespoons of juice. Huge difference there. So you can always add more later if you decide it doesn't have as much citrus as you want. And you can see I got 4 seeds in there, which is good. We don't want those inside the dish. And then I'm going to just take the tahini. I'll go ahead and add that. I may as well scrape it out, actually. It's a little thick. To get that in there, and the yogurt. And then I have minced onion and garlic. And those will go in. This doesn't have any fresh herbs per se, but you certainly could put some in if you wanted to. This is finely minced garlic. So if you're doing it and you want larger pieces, totally up to you. I tend to, if I'm putting fresh garlic in something that's not going to be cooked, then I tend to cut it much smaller, as opposed to if you're cooking something and it's a bigger piece, it mellows it out a little bit through the cooking process. So that should work fine. And then the minced onion. And a lot of people find onions to be too strong if they're raw. My wife Alice doesn't like them like that. She always wants them grilled or sauteed lightly or sweated. Or you can also just take hot water. If you have a teapot or kettle at home, bring your water to a boil. You pour it over the top of your onion, let it sit for about 5 minutes, and drain off that liquid. It's going to take that harshness out of the onion, but still give you the flavor, the texture, and things like that. So I'm not going to do that with this particular one, but I'm looking at this onion. I'm only going to go about 2/3 of it. Again, I can come back and add more if I decide I want to. Let me make sure. Oh, it's getting close.
I do have a question from Karen. What size is the tahini usually sewed in? Is it sewed in the refrigerated section?
It does not have to be in the refrigerated section. We get ours in like cases, so I apologize. I don't know. I don't think I have ever bought it at the store. But it shouldn't need to be in the refrigerated section. We store it in our storeroom here, which is our dry storage. So that should be where you find it in the supermarket. But maybe there's a nice fresh one. It's sort of like maybe you find a place like Whole Foods that would do like the fresh one, like the peanut butter. Now you see the little fresh ground peanut butter machines that you can get that sort of to order. That would be a little bit different. Maybe it would be in the refrigerated section, but it shouldn't be necessary.
No, Lynn, she wants to know if the yogurt that you used, was it 5% fat, full fat Greek yogurt, or one of the lower fat versions, like 2%?
Steve put that prep together for me, so I can't say exactly. I would recommend the lower fat one because we're trying to keep things healthy. I'm going to add a little bit more of the lemon juice. But yeah, go with whatever works for you. If you're not worried as much about the fat content, then you can probably lean more towards the fatty ones. But even this last week, I tried a keto yogurt, and I was surprised it tasted really good. So that had higher fat, but it didn't have the carbs. So there's all kinds of products out there for whatever diet you might be looking at or trying to stay away from. Like I just added the salt. If you're trying to stay away from salt, lower your blood pressure, then you can eliminate that from this particular recipe. So yeah, I would just check the labels and see. And then the Greek yogurt I find to be kind of stiff. So, I mean, this would work good as a dip actually like that. But if I'm going to use it as a dressing, I'm going to add a little bit of that garbanzo bean liquid just to thin it slightly. Give me what I'm looking for. So that has been in there close for about 6 minutes. And I just set it to 13 so it doesn't go off and bug us, but keep my eye on it. I think I'm going to end up at around 10 minutes for this particular air fryer. So I'm going to just.
Luana has a question. Would garlic powder work in place of fresh?
Always. Yeah. You can always feel free to use garlic powder, or you can use the dehydrated garlic. I've talked about that a fair amount. That's definitely one of my favorite things to use is the dehydrated one. Tastes really good. A little more salt, but yeah, absolutely. Dehydrated onion, dehydrated garlic, any of those things that can help save space in your refrigerator and they don't spoil. They can last a long time. They work perfectly good. So that whole lemon worked out perfectly. So I got all of the juice from it, about 15 seeds there. It's fine on the zest, so I'm going to add the rest of this. I just wasn't sure. Looking at it, it looked like a lot, but I think I'm going to be okay. But I'm not going to add that last little bit of onion. And you can see this dressing starts to come together. It's got that tahini flavor, the yogurt, really nice. And I think that will work well for the dip that we want. I'm going to just put it into this little supreme bowl that I have here. And if I wanted to, I could, of course, come back and garnish it with a little bit of parsley. That could have some parsley in it too, like I said earlier, if you wanted to do that. Hit it with a little bit of that chip Aleppo pepper. That'll give it just a teeny bit of heat, not too hot, but kind of nice. So that one's done. And I just need to move on to my salad while I wait and hope not to burn this. Okay. I think that'll be about right. So you can just cut me off, Lonnie, if I go over.
Okay, Priscilla has a question. She wants to know if you've heard or made tahini yourself. She did find it on Amazon.
Like homemade, you mean?
Yes.
Or, I've never made it myself, no, but you can. It's not hard to do, right? Toasted or untoasted sesame seeds ground up. Matter of fact, even that little spice grinder that we use would probably work for that. So making it fresh would not be that difficult. I don't know about using a mortar and pestle. You could probably do that too, but it would take a little bit longer. I have a bad habit in the kitchen of like trying to come up with things that are as efficient as possible because we're always trying to do things quickly and hopefully profitable, sadly, but that's what you have to do in a professional kitchen. But that sounds really interesting and worth a try. Maybe I'll try that. Okay, so I just have a tomato, an onion, a zucchini, which I'm going to cut a couple strips just for color, like 3. I ran one down the side already. And there's nothing wrong with the peel on that. It's perfectly fine. So I can use that, but I wanted to just mix up the color a little bit. And then I have celery. I'm just going to do some julienne celery hearts. And I don't want them super fine. I want a little bit of texture to this salad. So the leaves are okay as is, like that. And then we get these beautiful, tender, sweet heart portions that probably my favorite part of celery for sure. I'm going to cut the ends off of the zucchini. I probably only need about half of this. And then I'm going to split it in half and just do the slices. Did you have any other questions, Lonnie?
Yes, while you're cutting, and this is a question from Patricia. Don't know if she wanted to find out about the air fryers, but she's not familiar with them and wanted to know what the advantages are for air fryer and what should she look for in buying one.
Great questions all. I'd never used air fryers prior to this class, and Jackie Malley or Bolin recommended it. Cindy kindly, and I think Cindy's with us tonight. Hey, Cindy, donated one, and we love it. Alice uses it and borrows it, and we use it for the show, and then she uses it at home. I can't really speak to brands I don't know. Plus, I don't think AARP likes us talking about stuff like that. Just go online and do your research. But the advantage to them is that they circulate air. That's really the main difference. It's basically an oven with a fan that circulates air very quickly. So it sort of turbocharged a convection oven. And that helps things cook more quickly, toast more quickly. And it really does make a difference. I was thinking tonight, actually, I'm like, wow, what a smart idea that someone just made a convection oven, but made it so that it actually cooks quicker. It's not frying, it's a good name. It's actually just baking. I'm just cutting these really thin. I'm trying to watch. I don't want to. But we do cut a lot without actually watching what we're doing, but I don't recommend that at home. A little bit of onion, fresh onion. And then next I'm gonna just do the tomato. And for this, I'm gonna just cut in half, and I'm gonna take out the stem. And I'm gonna do kind of large chunks. So I might do quarters like this, like a wedge. This is a nice ripe tomato. They're running about $1 a piece these days. It's crazy. And then I'm going to cut them in half. So I kind of want big chunks. This is almost like a Greek salad in a way, is what I had envisioned going through the cooler to put stuff together for it. And then I just need a little bit of romaine. And we did this the other day. Was it last week maybe? The tip looks a little dry, so I'm going to take that off. But I may have showed you, or I know I showed you, that I always split it lengthwise a couple times to get the smaller bites, yeah? So I'm going to take my knife and come down and go lengthwise while it's still on the bulb. It's been washed and dried. I can just go down that way a couple times. So theoretically, it's going through it 3 times, but both sides, so you get like really 6 cuts. And then I can turn it this direction and do maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch slices all the way down towards the heart of it. And then that gives me all little bite-sized pieces. So I don't have to worry about those long strings. So always try to run your knife lengthwise first and then do it crosswise so you end up with smaller pieces. Easier to eat. And then we just put this here. I could easily use the dressing. I was thinking to myself, I could take this little bit of dressing I have left. I could add some vinegar or more lemon juice or even a little bit of water just to water it down and then toss the salad. But because I'm delivering some, I don't want it to wilt. So I'm just going to toss these together lightly like this. And then the dressing can be served on the side like that. Doesn't hurt to put a little bit of salt and pepper in it. That will help draw out the liquid too. So be a little careful with that. If you're delivering it or eating the salad later, you don't want to load it up with seasoning or acid because that will break it down. I've got my crumbs on my plate. I don't want those. Now I can just simply take a little bit of the salad, put it along the top, I think. That's all nice and fresh. And that can be anything you want. It doesn't have to be the items that we're using tonight. Whatever your favorite items are. To pull that out, I can hear them sizzling. I don't know if you guys probably can't hear it. I think that's the mic, but you can hear the sizzling from that little bit of oil and the moisture and whatnot cooking up. And then this I'm going to put on here to get this platter a little bit of height. And then I just need to put the falafel on here. That can be served with it. So I'll be careful and try to like lift this out in one piece without burning my hand. It'll make it easier for me to dish it up. And you can see they got nice and golden brown. You know, they should still have the moisture. This one was sitting on the handle. There's a handle in the bottom of this one that actually kind of split it when it went down raw, but it did bake in that shape. It might even come off like that. Yeah, not bad. It broke right where that handle was and came up through it, but that's fine. It'll still be edible. And then they can just get turned off onto the platter. And more of an appetizer, really. Could be a meal, I suppose, but usually you'd want some form of protein. They were actually, I was reading about them today, and they were created as a substitute for meats when meats weren't available during certain seasons. And if you couldn't afford meat. So this is something that gives texture and substance similar to a protein, a meat protein, without the meat protein. And now it's been adopted by vegetarians around the world, as we were saying earlier, very popular all across the globe. So I also put that there. And you
Yes.
could easily spoon this over the top or serve it as a platter. But I think, let me turn it around. I think between, the crisp light coldness of the salad, a little bit of the dressing with that to get that tahini, and then the chickpeas and a little bit of cilantro. It's just really nice combination. And of course, if you're not worried about eating carbohydrates or whatnot, you can use pita pockets, and usually those can be stuffed inside. You can add more cilantro or any of these salad type ingredients, some dressing, and eat it that way. The sky's the limit. So hopefully you enjoy it. Hope you give it a try. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, I do. Janice wants to know if you don't have an air fryer, how would you cook it?
Hey, Janice, I was just in a meeting with Janice, so. Toaster oven works fine. I took the toaster oven down, but you know that I always have the regular toaster oven here. That particular one has a little fan in it. It's certainly not as powerful a fan as this one, but even if you have a conventional oven, an old school conventional oven, any type of toaster oven, it'll work fine. The advantage to the fan is really more the speed. So you may just need to take a little bit longer, and you may need to turn up the temperature a little bit. So the rule of thumb that we teach and learn when you go to cooking school is that if you don't have a fan in your oven, the temperature usually is 25% higher. So most of your recipes today are based on ovens with fans. So if you get a recipe that says 350 degrees for a convection oven with a fan, and you don't have one, you would up your temperature 25 degrees, so 375 for what we would call a conventional oven, which is just still hot air. So most of your ovens today come with a fan, even the small toaster ovens, because they've recognized the value of circulating that air more quickly. Everything bakes more evenly and faster. So yeah, don't let that stop you. Honestly, this could probably be microwave. You could simply do it in a skillet to get a little crispness to it, and then finish it in the microwave, or do it completely in the pan. It's up to you. But yeah, never let the lack of a tool stop you from experimenting or trying. This is really economical recipe, tasty, and very healthy. So great question, Janice. Thanks.
Just wanted to say for the May session, if you want to do the one-time sign up, just go to the chat. There is a link that's being posted now. And I just want to say mahalo, Chef Swift, Alice Swift, the AARP Hawaii volunteers, Shar, Cindy, Craig, Dave, and most importantly, you folks at home. I'm Lonnie, and we'll see you next week for Meet June. Have a good evening, folks.